It's been about 3.5 years since I started to build this Twin Otter cockpit, and those of you who were following along with the build will remember perhaps that one of the stated reasons for building this cockpit was that I wanted to start doing some proper flying. And 3.5 years later I've still really to embark on any such flying. I spent much more time tinkering with, refining, taking apart and putting back together my cockpit than I have actually flying anywhere. Usually when I fly it's point to point, you know, sort of 5 or 10 or 20 miles, or I'm flying between a couple of new airports I've bought, or I'm making a film for review purposes or something like that. So that's going to change. About a week ago I got an email from Aerosoft inviting me to take part in their Round the World in 80 Days event. Apparently this has been something that's in preparation for quite a long time, but I only got the mail shot recently with less than a week to go. So I decided to take part in that event, and essentially it's a recreation of sorts of the route taken by Phileas Fogg in Jules Verne's famous novel. And beyond that there's pretty much no rules. You've got to select an aircraft, plan a route, and then the idea is to just keep an online blog of sorts with updates along the way. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it as a video project, and I'm going to make a series of, I don't know how many videos and really what kind of videos they're going to be, but you know, in some sense this is going to follow my progress. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it all the way. It's 20,000 miles or more, and you know, I've just been doing the planning. The planning has got to be done by today because the event actually starts tomorrow, 1st of October, and I've got to have the plan registered by tonight, I think. But it's an awful long way, and just doing the planning has emphasised that. But anyway, it's going to give me some purpose in the flying, and it's going to give me some good material to do a series of videos on. Now, in preparation for this flight, I've equipped myself with a fistful of flight planning and resource management applications, and we're going to be running these on the iPad. What you're seeing here is the FS Widgets Quick Plan Flight Planner, and the guys at FS Widgets have been generous enough to give me a full complement of the iPad apps to try out. So I'm going to be trying those out along the way, getting to know them really along the way, because there's a bit of depth to those applications, and at some point I will pull that all together and do some sort of overview of the FS Widgets iPad and iPhone apps. So that's going to give me another focus for the trip. Of course, this trip is going to stand or fall on the quality of the scenery. Now, I'm going to be doing this in the Twin Otter Extended, which means I'm going to be in FSX using my full hardware cockpit, and most of the scenery you're going to see is Orbix scenery, no surprises there. But really, flying 20,000 miles is going to pretty soon wear thin if the scenery is very samey, you know, in every part of the route. And I'm really hoping it's not going to be that way. I'm hoping it is going to be a kind of an adventure of exploration. So what have we got in terms of scenery? Well, the core product is going to be FTX Global. So I've got Global Base, Global Vector installed. I've got the Pilot 2010 mesh installed. So that should look better, at least from the air. It does cause problems with some of the airports, but we're not going to do too many landings in this. It's going to be en route essentially for most of the trip. So FTX Global. I've also just installed the FTX Open Land Class Europe, and that's because a substantial part of the first leg of the trip is down through Europe, sort of be covered by the FTX Global and the Open Land Class, and so that should look pretty fantastic if it works as advertised. And then we're going to rely on the FTX Global textures for a substantial part of the route, and then when we join back up with North America, we're back into some of the more detailed FTX products. I don't think I have the Alaska products. I have the Pacific Fjords, I have the Pacific Northwest, I don't have Northern California, I do have Southern California. So that'll that'll take me down basically the west coast of North America to San Francisco, and then there may be a bit of Southern California depending on the route I'm going to take, and then we're across North America on FTX Global to New York. Then we're going to go up to Canada, and we're going to do the Atlantic crossing via Greenland and then Iceland and then to the UK. So I've got the EU England product and EU Scotland product installed. I've got Stornoway Airport from Sim70, I think is Stornoway, so that's one of the two non-Orbix softwares that we'll probably see in this video series. I've also got Sombra, which is an Orbix product. What else? The second non-Orbix product I have is, I've forgotten the name of it, it's an airport in Greenland. That's an Aerosoft airport, which I bought yonks ago and haven't even installed yet, so this is a good, I mean, because I was gearing up at some point to do like a ferry flight across the Atlantic, so this will basically cover that as well. Greenland is covered by the, oh sorry, I forgot to mention I've got the Open Land Class North America product, so that covers Canada and the United States, and it covers Greenland as well. Then of course Orbix has an Iceland demo product. Well, it's I think it's a demo, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm pretty sure you get the whole of Iceland and it's free. I've either got that installed or I will install it in due course. So we're pretty well covered, and if all of those products slot together and give us anything like the kind of variety we should see in the real world, this is going to be a pretty amazing trip. I'm going to try and fly this, well, I'm not going to fly it manually by any means, I'm going to mostly rely on the autopilot, but I am going to fly it in real time. I'm not going to use time compression. I think during the longer, more tedious stretches I will step away and rely on my trusty co-pilot Wilson, but for the most part I'm going to be in the cockpit or near the cockpit while it's flying, and because I want to get a look at where we're flying. There are some tedious stretches, it has to be said, where there's not going to be a lot to see, but I've routed this basically so I stay below 10,000 feet because I'm not going to be flying with supplementary oxygen, and of course the Twin Otter isn't pressurised. So below 10,000 feet, I'm going to try not to do any long water crossings any longer than I need to. Obviously in some cases, the Atlantic crossing, you do need to do some pretty long stretches over water. Those are just going to be tedious to watch. I don't know how I'll do the navigation yet. This is going to be in the GPS. One of the things that the FS Widgets Quick Planner is going to allow me to do is to squirt the plan into the FSX GPS. I normally fly with the Reality XP GPS. Now, as far as I know, there's no way to upload an FSX flight plan to that. Now, what I'm hoping to do is use that as a kind of a orientation and backup, and try to do some of the navigation VOR to VOR, just so I could get a practice at using some of the equipment in the aircraft, and NDBs as well. In some of these regions there aren't any VORs, there's only NDBs, so again we'll be probably using some of those. So getting to exercise the radios, it's really not clear how much of an experience this is actually going to be once we get underway. The flight planning is way simplified from the real world. We're not using air traffic control, we're not going to take any account, or barely going to take any account of airspace restrictions, and of course I'm going to nominally be flying VFR, although we're going to be using real world weather, so if and when the weather closes in we're just going to pretend we're instrument rated and we're going to fly IMC and maybe do some instrument approaches to some of these waypoints, all highly irregular and highly illegal and probably highly incompetent the way it's going to be done, but it's going to be fun to try some of that. So that's going to be fun, but we're going to have plenty of gadgets to play with. The FS Widgets apps include a moving map display, which we can have. Well, I'm going to experiment with that. We're going to have it on the big iPad, but we're going to try that on a regular iPad mini. We've got a similar app for the iPhone. So we're going to mix and match, we're going to compare those. One of the things that's going to be important is real world weather is all very well, but I'm not going to be up in the middle of the night flying these legs, you know, when it's daylight in China and so on. You know, I'm going to be flying that leg as and when I get a time to fly it. So running with real world weather, the difficulty with that is, you know, we run the risk of me flying it as daylight, but the weather's actually nighttime weather. So we need to work out some sort of time shift. I need to look at the time zones. In fact, I've got the time zone set up on the phone here. So I've got London, Cairo, Mumbai, Hong Kong, Tokyo, San Francisco, and so on. And what we've got to do is we've got to jump in the aircraft, figure out the time difference. I'm using our Active Sky Next for the weather, so I've got to flick it off live weather and put it onto what Active Sky Next calls, I've forgotten, historical live mode or something. So you can basically dial in the weather as it was 8 hours ago, and then it will continue to update in the correct sequence. That's a hopelessly garbled explanation, but I know exactly what I mean. So I think that pretty much covers it. We're about to embark on this around the world in 80 days, so we're finished by Christmas. 21st of December this closes, if we get that far. So stay tuned, watch the videos, and you can follow the blog on the Aerosoft Around the World in 80 Days forum. And then of course look out for the FS Widgets iPad apps review in due course.